Well, hello and welcome to the Creating Connections podcast, where I bring voices and perspectives from people who are making a difference for children's learning and development. I'm Rachel Stewart, and I'm passionate about connecting with people to share experiences and learn from each other how we can best support children to thrive. As founder and director of Practically Learning, I specialise in developing the capacity of parents and educators through personal development coaching and professional learning programs that build trust to engage in effective partnerships. In this series of the podcast, we're exploring different people, support networks, and organisations who are able to provide a circle of support for you as parents as you navigate your way through the school journey with your children. You will learn from a diverse range of people how they can support you to guide your children to reach their fullest potential as unique and whole beings. Today, I'm introducing you to Danielle Flack, or as she's also known as, the Careers Coach. Danielle is a secondary school teacher, a passionate careers practitioner, and author of a career planning handbook and resource for students called Navigating Your Future Career and Work Life. Danielle is passionate about supporting teachers, students, and parents to understand the career development journey. Her mission is to foster a better understanding of the career planning process so parents and teachers can be better informed, resourced, and prepared to support teens and young adults. Her goal is to guide, inspire, and help create brighter futures for young people. So I'd like to welcome Danielle Flack to the podcast today. Well, welcome to the podcast. It's great to
Thank
have you here.
you.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I've been wanting to speak to someone about careers for a long time because I know that this is such a big topic, especially for parents, because for myself, I've put three children through school, and I think that there's only so much parents know about how to guide their children
Yeah.
through their career choices and how to actually choose where they want to go. But it's very much a case of being left in the dark, I think, in
Mm.
terms of what we know, how we can actually guide them in the right direction without telling them what to do or putting our own 2 cents of worth in of what's a good job and what's a good career and all of those sorts of things that we sort of tend to do as parents because we want the
Mm,
best for our kids. But
exactly.
there's not a lot of communication from schools, unfortunately, about how to actually guide our kids and how to work with the school and our children to be able to really support them and set them up for success. I've been very interested to hear your perspective. So perhaps you can start by sharing your background story. You've obviously started in teaching and now you've moved into being a careers coach. So take me back to what led you into teaching in the first place and then into this pathway.
Yeah, so I think I've probably got, I would say an unconventional, but I think it's becoming more conventional now story. When I was in year 12, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had a vague idea of what I was good at, and that was writing and being persuasive. But I didn't know what that looked like in terms of work. And I finished school back in the early 2000s, 2002. And back then, careers education was not really a thing. We had a small little office, and out the front there was brochures. And when you made an appointment, the careers counselor took you out and gave you some brochures. So it was very much that information delivery sort of model. And one of the brochures that I got was on public relations, and it had on the back, are you good at communication and writing and being persuasive? And I went, yes, this is me. Obviously, this is so obvious to me now. So I thought that's what I'm going to do. So I went off to study at university in public relations and journalism. And after about 3 weeks, I realized this is not for me. What was I thinking? And I stuck it out for the year just. And then at the end of that year, just went, I don't even know if university's for me. I don't even know if this is the right fit for me at all. So I thought, I'm going to go back and I'm going to think about what I actually enjoy doing and not worry so much about how that aligns with our career. So I did the thing that most people will tell you not to do, which is a Bachelor of Arts. And I started my Bachelor of Arts and I just concentrated on picking the subjects that sounded interesting to me. And so I did a whole range of different units. I did sociology, I did literature, history, I did art history, I did all these random things. And then by the end of my second year, I went, okay, I've had a year of playing. Um, how's this going to look like in terms of work? And I thought, well, my parents think I'm wasting my time doing a Bachelor of Arts. So what if I tack an education degree on here as well? So third year, new degree again. I was doing Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Education. And then I finished that degree, and I was offered a job in my old high school where I had done some teaching rounds, and that's sort of where I started my teaching degree. And pretty quickly, I realized that it wasn't quite right. It was okay, but it wasn't quite the right fit for me. And I stuck it out for about 2.5 years and I went, no, I'm not a teacher. Like this isn't who I am. I don't want to be in the classroom all the time doing all this kind of stuff. So I took a little career break. And I went off and I worked at VTAC doing application assessing, which was really interesting. And then I somehow managed to wrangle a job at a university in student recruitment. So I was going out to all of the schools and meeting young people and talking about their careers and doing all that kind of stuff. But the problem with that was that I met someone for 5 minutes and then that was it. I didn't know what happened next. Wasn't involved really in their journey. I was just kind of really briefly in their lives. And I thought, maybe I should go back to school. Maybe I should work in this space where I can actually work with young people for a longer period of time and actually be involved in their journey. So I did my qualification and I went back into school, and I stayed there this time for quite some time, and did a whole range of different things in that careers education space. So obviously working as a careers counsellor, but also doing a lot of curriculum development, working in that wellbeing space, working in as a key learning area leader, so all different sort of stuff within that space gave me lots of opportunities to work with young people and their families. And then obviously recently, I've stepped out of schools again at the end of last year, and I'm doing graduate research now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. What a story. There's so many questions I have just from that introduction. Yeah, interesting you mentioned about how your parents had an expectation of
Mm,
you and their perception of what a Bachelor of Arts is being a waste of time.
yeah.
How did that impact you, I guess, in terms of deciding to go into education? Because
Mm,
as we know, Bachelor of Arts, you can go into different fields, but it's not really, it's a bit of a grey area, isn't it, as a
it
course?
is.
Because it kind of broadens your mind on different things and gives you that opportunity to really sink your teeth into some great subjects. And a lot of people go into politics, I guess, and probably most, I don't know what the data is and stats, but most people probably go into teaching. So,
Yeah.
what was the catalyst for you to decide to move into teaching instead of sort of maybe HR
Yeah.
or those sorts of fields that other people move into from a Bachelor of Arts?
Well, it's really interesting because what I probably should have prefaced this all with is saying that I'm the first in my family to go to university. So the expectation to go on to higher education was never there from my parents. It was more like me advocating for, I want to go on to higher education. So I guess for them, if I was going to fight to do this higher education, it needed to be something meaty. It needed to be something worthwhile. It wasn't just, oh, you're going to go and read books and write essays and like, what's the outcome of all of this? Um, and so they were supportive, but at the same time, they had never experienced university. They didn't know anything about it. It was this foreign place to them. Um, and another, I guess, interesting element was at the end of my degrees, I really did think, do I want to go into teaching? I have a teaching degree. I can become a teacher, but is that what I want to do right now? And I applied for a few different graduate positions, and I was successful in gaining one through the federal government. So it was funny that you should say politics. But it was based in Canberra, and I wasn't that young, but I felt really young. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to relocate to another state by myself to take up this position when I've already been offered another job that's literally 10 minutes down the road. I don't think I'm ready for the move yet. And it's one of those sliding door moments, I guess, where I always think, like, what would have my life been like if I had have taken up that role? I've kind of danced around that space, but I've never actually gone into it. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Real time.
Yeah, wow, God. I'm never moving to Canberra, so
Yeah, well, that's really interesting how that happens. And I think there are probably a lot of sliding door moments really when it comes down to making a choice. And it's interesting the choices that you make when you're at school. Obviously, you're so young and you don't really know exactly what you want to do.
Mhm.
Do you come across a lot of students who are in that position where they're almost fearful of that sliding door moment? What if I choose this and I don't like it? Like you just discovered that you actually had done your course and got into teaching, and all of a
Mm,
sudden you thought, oh, I actually don't think I'm a teacher.
mm,
That's a perception and a mindset, I guess, in terms of
mm,
you knew that you were wanting something more, but that sliding door moment or that choice that you have to make as a 17, 18-year-old, it really is a big ask.
mm.
So
It's
how do you, I guess, work with students around that mindset of taking the leap? Because it is any career choice is such a big leap of faith because you don't really know how it's going to turn out. And even applying for a job position, you don't know who the people are going to be or if you're going to actually enjoy it. So it really is a mindset
mm.
challenge. So
Oh,
how do you help
definitely.
your students overcome those?
I always get them to think about what's the worst that could happen. So if you make this decision and it's not right, what's the worst thing that's going to come of it? And for me, I did three different degrees in 3 years, and I'm still here to tell the tale. So you can do that. You can change your mind. You can change direction. Um, and I think a lot of the issues that I see with young people today is this almost they become frozen with needing to make a choice because they think too far into the future. So
Mm.
it's like, I need to know exactly what job I want and exactly who I want to work for before I can decide on what course I want to do or where I want to study or anything like that. And I think we need to just take the pressure off and go, like I did to myself, and go, what do you just really want to learn about right now? What is the next logical step for you? Because we don't know once we've opened that door, what new doors are going to open. We can't just sort of jump right ahead 5 years into the future and go, this is what we want now, and then work backwards. And we do need to do that in some sense. We do need to have some kind of a vague idea of where we want to go, but not be so fixed on it that we can't take the first step. So I always say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If you do a course and you don't like it, nobody is going to force you to stay there for the next 3 to 4 years to complete it. If you don't like it, you can change before census. You can probably change mid-year. You can change at the end of your first year. You can take a year off from study and reassess. There's all these things that you can do. And yes, the financial aspect of that is not great,
Mm.
but in the scheme of your whole life, you're not locked in and it's not going to ruin everything for you. So I think just taking that pressure off young people to say that, you're not making a decision that's going to ruin your life. If you make a mistake, that's okay.
Yeah. Are you finding now too that a lot of young people are quite indecisive and have no idea what they want to do or the expectations of what a job involves? And I guess as a young person myself, I didn't know what it was going to be like necessarily in the workplace, although I did have a part-time job. So I had an understanding of, you have to turn up to work on time, you have to do the job properly, you have to follow the rules and, work with customers. But are you finding there's a lot of young people who are not in part-time work now? So they're not really fully prepared even just to work. Um,
Mm.
and also to make a big decision of whether they do go to university or go straight into the workforce when you have no real understanding of yourself as a person and what your interests are. And particularly now, I guess the interests and hobbies of young people have changed. And are you finding that a lot more now with teenagers where they're a bit directionless, I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's two things there. The first one was what I really noticed was a disruptor was COVID, obviously.
Mm.
We had a 2-year gap there where young people were really affected by remote learning and lockdowns in particular, in terms of precarious work, the industries that were most affected by the lockdowns were places where young people work.
Mm.
Restaurants, cafes, all of retail, they were closed down. So young people weren't getting part-time jobs. They weren't working in part-time jobs. They were often the first ones to lose their jobs. So there was that interruption there. And I think the effects of that are still being seen as well. Because there are gaps in people's resumes. And then when you're thinking about, I worked a lot with year nines in 2022 on building resumes. There was a 2-year gap. And you're saying to them, tell me about a time when you did this and this, and you were in a sporting team. No, we didn't play sport for the last 2 years.
Yeah. Even sports.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't go on camp. There was this 2-year gap that they had nothing to write on their resumes,
Mm.
because they were in their houses. So what could they write?
Yeah.
And you're still sort of seeing that to some extent, not as much now, but there is sort of a group of young people that were more affected by that. And then the other part is that idea of indecision. And what I was seeing in the classroom, was that a lot of young people felt really reluctant to make decisions and didn't feel ready.
Mm.
Um, and you can see that through the increasing number of young people who are taking gap years after year 12. And I don't know if that's just because now it's more socially acceptable. Maybe it is. Gap years used to be, a dirty word. No one would ever say they were taking a gap year. But now I think people are seeing the value in it more. Just that opportunity to hit pause, think, reflect before making a decision.
And mature
Um,
a little bit as well.
yes, exactly. So I think there's that too. And I think the data supports that too. What we're seeing in terms of trends is that the number of young people who are applying for higher education, in particular universities, straight out of school is declining. But the number of people who are applying for university after 2 or 3 years out of school is increasing.
Yeah.
So it's like there's almost that opportunity to get out there, think a little bit, experience, live a little bit before I commit. And I wonder too if there's that financial aspect that comes into it as well. Cost of living is so high at the moment. Young people are becoming more aware of the cost of education.
Yeah.
And rather than committing to a course before they feel ready, and having that financial burden hanging over their head, maybe giving themselves some time to think and be sure before they commit to that, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, it can also be a challenge too because
Mm.
my eldest daughter, for example, she tried to get into a course at the end of year 12 and she didn't get the marks to get into the course she wanted to. So she didn't really know what she wanted to do other than that and didn't really have proper guidance, I guess, to know what to do next. And it just so happened that COVID hit just as she was finishing year 12 or just after she finished year 12. So she was almost forced to have a gap year. And she worked during that time. She found she already had a job and she was able to keep working. And it just gave her a bit more time to think about what she wanted to do and how to actually get into the course. So she ended up applying for health sciences and moved through the process, I suppose, the long way around. Still kept applying for occupational therapy and didn't get in while she was at university. And then eventually finished her course and then had to do a master's to get her degree. So she's been at university for 5 years. At the end of this year, she'll finish, but she'll come out with a massive debt and didn't realize that at the time. And I guess when you're trying to decide what you do, if you then you're set on what you want to do, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, actually, this is going to cost me a lot of money, and I'm going to be starting my life, my career with such a huge debt hanging over me, that potentially could put a lot of young people off totally from going to
Yeah.
university at all.
And we're finding that just that financial burden, um, particularly when you need to do that postgraduate qualification,
Mm,
it's huge. And a lot of young people are going, why? Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself at such a huge financial disadvantage? Is there another way? And that payoff isn't always there. I think as a society, we have this push towards credentialing. You know, it used to be that if you had a bachelor's degree, that was uncommon. And then we push, 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 push. And now lots of people have bachelor's degrees. And then it's like, well, do you have a postgraduate qualification? And it's push, push, push. And it's not just a graduate certificate anymore. It has to be a master's degree. And it's just continuously that more credentials, more credentials. And there's that expense associated with that as well. I don't have an answer.
mm.
I'm not going to give you a solution. Just it does exist and
Yeah.
it's concerning.
Yeah. And I guess as a parent, how do you then guide your child
Mm,
towards if you're set on your children going to university, which obviously ultimately it should be up to the child themselves to decide if that's their pathway. But if your child does want to go to university, how, as a parent, do you then just make them aware of these things before they start,
mm,
but in a way that is still encouraging them to pursue their dream,
mm,
and their passion, but not so much focusing on the debt, but
mm,
focusing on the potential of the career opportunity
mm,
and what I mean, the debt's always going to be there. And I think it's our
mm.
mindset around debt as well that
Yes.
it eventually gets paid off and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
not a big monster at the end of your degree that you have to deal with. It's just a gradual process.
Yes.
And it's your education. Like you're going to come
Yeah.
up with a master's degree in this qualification, and now that's going to open up a lot of doors for you. So,
Yeah.
as a parent, how do you speak to parents about their own mindsets around things and the things that
Yeah.
they share with their children?
I think it's really important to think about things in a really open-minded way. So look beyond what a course title is.
Mm,
Look beyond what you think the reputation of a university is, and actually look at what the student experience is. Actually have a think about what does this look like on a day-to-day level. So, take the Bachelor of Arts, for example. You can do a Bachelor of Arts at pretty much any university. But what you do within that Bachelor of Arts will look very different depending on where you study. So, actually going beyond that, what is the title of the course, and going, well, what can I study as part of this? And then what's the other stuff that surrounds the course? So, that could be, is there an internship available? Is there a work placement? Available? Is there an opportunity to connect with industry? Can I do a study abroad program? For a lot of young people, they want to travel and they want to do their course, but they don't want to add time to it. So this is an amazing opportunity and it looks great on a resume. So looking at all the extra stuff that's part of the course, I think is really important. Um, is there an opportunity to do a industry placement as part of the course itself that you get credit for, which is another huge incentive as well, making you employable. So I think for parents, it's about helping your young person think about what questions to ask,
Mm.
what's the information that I need to know, and going beyond the glossy brochures or the fun stuff that's happening at open day and asking the difficult questions and interrogating it a little bit as well. Um, One thing that I would do frequently with students is we'd come in and they'd say, I'm choosing between these two courses, and I don't really know what the difference is because they kind of sound the same. And so just the simplest thing to do was to go, okay, let's look at the units. So these are the units here for this course. These are the units. Let's read through the unit descriptions. Let's see what the types of assessments are. And then as soon as you started to look at it, they'd go, oh, that course sounds terrible. I hate the sound of it. I thought it sounded good, but that's not actually what I want to do. And we've just saved them a year of wasting their time, just by looking at the units. Or they might say they want to do a business degree and they might want to major in human resources. And they're like, oh, well, every university has a business degree, but not all of them offer human resources. And you don't want to enroll in the course and then realize on the day when you're picking your subjects that that doesn't even exist at that uni.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's a really obvious thing, but it's not. And if you're the first in the family to go to university or you're studying something that is really different to what your family support network is studying, these might be revelations. This is new information. So I think it's really important, just even that basic stuff, just knowing the questions to ask
Yeah.
to help.
Absolutely. Those questions are so important. But yeah, like you said, if you haven't been to university before or you're not sure about what sort of questions to ask, it can be quite challenging.
Oh, definitely.
And it's really important questions for parents to ask as well, because
Mm,
especially if they have to fund some of the course, because
mm,
my middle daughter's doing graphic design and she had the opportunity to go overseas last year, which was a fantastic opportunity.
mm.
But I didn't really know about it at the start when she first started, and she wasn't sure if she was going to apply, but she eventually did, and we encouraged her to. But there was a financial aspect to that she funded herself, and because we at the time we couldn't fund it for her, and she would have missed out if she didn't have savings. So luckily she had worked and she saved, and we did contribute a little bit of funding. But my other daughter, the one that's doing the masters, has also been on placement unpaid. So it's challenging for parents financially as well to be able to know that these things are coming so you can prepare for them. And it would be amazing to have a series of questions like that to be able to actually ask up front, what are we actually getting into here? Because I think
Yes,
that in your experience, is that, do you think why a lot of young people do drop out because they think, oh, this is what wasn't what I expected at all?
definitely. Yep. I think this isn't a knock against universities. I'm in one right now, but I think there's a lot of marketing that goes on, and it's a lot about selling the product,
Mm.
and which is great. But yeah, that this is the real. There's real life as well, and I think you touched on something there with the paid placements. Paid placements are a fantastic way to build up your skills, see if the workplace is the right place for you, teaches you things that you can't learn in the classroom at all, can potentially lead on to a job. But how do you fund that? You still have to live. And if they're not paid, and there's so many degrees that are like that, teaching, nursing, a lot of in the health field as well. And yeah, it's that really tough balance of I'm getting this really amazing educational experience that's going to help me, but the short term of this is that I'm not making any money and I'm probably going to be struggling quite a bit to get there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
it's challenging. And I wanted to touch on something because I was teaching at TAFE for a little while and I got to know a lot of the students, and they were doing an advertising marketing diploma, not a degree, a diploma. And I felt that there were a lot of misguided students who were doing the course. It was almost as if they chose something just to do a course, and it wasn't
mhm,
really necessarily suited to their skills and skill
mhm.
sets. And I think out of 80 students that I had, I probably would have maybe had four that would make it in advertising out of
Mm.
80. And that's a very small number because they had the writing skills and the presentation skills and all of those things that are required for the job. But the rest of those students would have struggled to get work in advertising or any sort of marketing, which really opened my eyes a lot to what is actually happening and that this needs to change because if young people are just being guided into courses just because that's what they should do, or a careers advisor has told them, oh, well, you should do this course, and then they're dropping out or not turning up or not even really doing the work at all, then we're not really setting up young
Mm.
people for success.
I agree. Yeah, and you do see it happen, and a lot of the time is, I guess again, there's a couple of sides to it. There's one that for schools, they want an outcome.
Yes.
And that's marketing ploy again. It's, where did our students go? We're a failure as a school if our students don't have a destination. They're not going somewhere. We can't say that, oh, we had this percentage of students who went off to university, this percentage of students who went off to TAFE, and this many students have gone off to employment. Schools like a destination because that for them is tick the box. We've done a great job. We've prepared them for the next step.
And market
Um,
their marketing as well.
yeah, exactly, exactly. The other side is that I think there's that peer element to it as well, that for young people, almost success is attached to what your destination is as well. So, everyone's getting their offers made and all that. You don't, from a peer perspective, it's like, well, I need to have a destination too. What's everyone else doing? Maybe I'll join in with them as well. And that peer pressure is such a huge one that we see. You see it in schools manifest in all different ways. It could be towards particular courses. One student says that they want to do that, and then all of a sudden 50 students want to do it because that one student was really convincing as to why that was a really good course.
Wow.
Then you see it also in terms of where as well. So this university is the best university. So all of a sudden everybody wants to go there and no one wants to go to the other one anymore.
Mm.
So you see it in that sense as well. And then sometimes there's the pressure there too from families to say, we don't care what you're studying, just study something. And
Yeah.
then, like me, that vague idea, well, I'm kind of okay at this, so maybe that's what I should do. And, it's that idea of just sort of floating around. I've got a vague sense, maybe this is what I'll do. Um, and and I will say this, there are careers advisors out there who will still do that kind of, oh, maybe just try this, maybe just try that sort of thing. Because again, you have to report on it. And if you don't have a destination, it looks like you're a failure. So, and I would like to think that that's not happening as much anymore. I would like to think, and from my experience, most of the careers network that I've been involved in want the best outcome for the young person, whether that's education, training, or something else.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's a shifting landscape. Um, I would often sit down, and I know I'm not alone in doing this, that I would sit down with a young person, particularly if they are at risk of leaving school. And I would say, I would love for you to stay at school. That's because we can protect you here. We can insulate you here. We have all these services for you here. But if it's not the place for you, then what does that place look like for you? Whether it's an apprenticeship or employment or whatever it looks like, and map it out with them that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and I guess that that's sort of shifted in our education system now too, with particularly in
Yes.
Victoria, with the
Mm,
vocational major and the way that they've structured the end of schooling for those young people who don't necessarily want to go to university, but they want to be skills-based workers.
hmm
And so, do you work with students and their parents around that subject selection time around year 10, year 9,
mm.
10? to map out what they actually might do so that they can choose their subjects correctly. Because I think that was a
Mm,
bit of a frustration for me as a parent was going to subject selection evenings and yes, talking with the teachers about the different subjects and those sorts of things, but I always felt like there was a missing piece of the puzzle where, okay, so if he chooses this subject, what does that mean? What's that leading to? Is that going to mean he's going to miss out on this subject in year 12? Like all of those little nuances of subject selection that
mm,
actually impact the outcome, but
yeah,
also what sort of course can they apply for if they do these subjects? Do they need specific subjects for courses? All of those little things that
yeah,
and for some parents that might be very overwhelming and they have no headspace for it at all. How
yeah,
can we simplify that process for both for parents and for the student?
yeah. I think I'm going to really give you a peek behind the curtain here. The subject selection, and particularly in Victoria, there it's far less complicated than schools would like you to believe that it is.
Right.
So when you think about it, and this is a shift in, I guess, a higher education space as well. There are far less prerequisites for university courses. There are so many different ways of getting into courses. Um, it's not as rigid and as structured as it used to be. So it used to be, oh, you had to do maths methods and you had to do this and you had to do that. Now we're finding even courses like engineering, for example, have removed a lot of their prerequisites. And you could do general maths and still be considered because they will teach you the skills that you need to know when you get there. And
Okay.
they would do that through, we might have one lot of maths for students who have done maths methods, and then we'll have another class that if you haven't done maths methods, we will put you in that class, and it's like a bridging course. Um, so a lot of the time, there are courses that have prerequisites, and it's really important to be aware of that. If those types of fields of study or courses are on your radar, you need to be all over that. You need to be making sure. But there aren't that many prerequisites. Um, so there is a lot of flexibility in what you can do in year 11 and 12. And there's a lot of flexibility in terms of using it as a time to explore your interests. So if you have an inkling that you're interested in physical education because you might want to go on to physiotherapy or something like that, try it out, do it in VCE, do it for your unit 1, 2. If you don't like it, change it for unit 3, 4, do something else. And for a lot of students, it's the combination of subjects that's going to provide them with the highest ATAR that's perhaps more important than the subjects as being necessary for course entry. I've seen students who are doing vet and school programs, and it might be a design course, it might be an engineering course. And if it's a scored vet in schools program, that could be their best score. And
Mm,
they've then finished their VCE program with a certificate 2 course or a certificate 3 course. Ends up being their highest study score in some instances because they love it and it's practical and it's so different to all the other stuff that they're doing. And then they've got two options. They can continue pursuing it through a TAFE pathway. They can continue pursuing it through a higher education pathway. So I think it's not so much about being aware of the restrictions, but actually being aware of all the opportunities that exist in year 11 and 12 of making it a really rich and exciting time where young people can do all different subjects. It's not rigid. It's actually there's heaps there that they can be doing, and I feel like sometimes we get bogged down on what are the rules when actually we should be looking at what are the opportunities.
yes, that's a great
Yeah.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that it's really important for parents to understand that as well because
Yes.
when your child has passion for example, I did the art subjects. I did graphic design, graphics and art. And if they have a passion for music or, science
Mm,
or whatever it is their passion is, and they choose those subjects, but a parent disagrees with that and they think they
mm,
should be doing the maths, the science, the chemistry, and all of
mm,
those really heavy subjects that can really be quite challenging in year
mm.
12. How do you approach that with parents who are sort of stuck in that mindset of when we
Yeah.
were educated and we were told those things
Mm,
that you have to be good at certain things to be able to get into
mm.
certain careers?
Yes.
To approach that with parents.
It is a really difficult space. And I think being respectful of where parents are coming from, because at the end of the day, parents aren't doing this because they want to make their child's life miserable. They're doing it because they think that that's the best intention for them. So I think um, providing the actual information. So I know a lot of, there's always this talk about scaling, and scaling makes me want to throw up because it is just, we can't control it. We have patterns from the past. We know, how things happen in the past and how subjects generally go. It's so irrelevant. It doesn't, you can't control it. It's dependent on so many different factors, but what we can control is doing the subjects that we enjoy doing, the ones that make us happy, the ones that we're potentially going to be good at, and excel at. We can control those things. And we can see that when young people are doing a program, particularly in their senior years, that allows them to showcase their talents, their interests, their passions, what they want, who they are, they're going to do better.
Yeah.
And while we might want them to be science and math students, if they're not, you're not going to be able to squash them into that box right at the end of their schooling.
No.
Um, that's already that's taken place many, many years before. And no matter how much we want to try and squash them in there, there's going to be this point in time where they are going to reject that. If that's not who they are and that's not what they want to do, they're going to reject it. It might be in year 11, it might be in the first year of university, could be well beyond that. We don't know when, but there's going to be a point where they're going to be like, I really just wish I could have done what I wanted to do. And year 11 and 12, yep, it's a time where we get an ATAR at the end and we're planning our future and all that. But it's also a really pivotal time in terms of transition and becoming an adult.
Adult. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an important time to, do other stuff too and have fun and develop your skills and your experience and like just be a young person.
Yeah, and there's so much emphasis on that outcome, isn't there? And it puts
Yes.
so much pressure on young people and impacts their well-being, and that the whole scaling system can
Yeah.
impact well-being as well, because
Yeah.
even if they put in so much effort and do their best, and then they still don't get the score that they want,
Yeah.
it's just such a, um, I guess a really bad system in that sense, because we're not looking at the person and their own experience. And yeah, like you said, it should be really fun. The last 2 years of school should not be just all work and no play.
Yes.
And I think that I hear of a lot of parents who say to their children, no, you have to give up your part-time job. No, you have to
Quit
go
sport.
what and yes, and sport is a huge part of your well-being, and
Yes.
just getting out there and having fun with your friends and playing the sport that you love. And if we take that away and just focus on academics, it's really
Mm.
not healthy for our young people. And
No,
no wonder they're having a gap year, because they're so exhausted by the end of year 12 and they need a break. They're
exactly.
just
Yeah.
get burnt out. So
And we have to think too, like what do we know about young people? We know that at the moment they've got all of this stuff happening and that a lot of them are experiencing some serious mental health issues. Let's not make it worse. Like, let's not add another layer to it of saying this is what you have to do and you have to study this and you have to do this. Like, let's go, okay, what are we going to include in your senior school program that is going to give you the best chance for a good outcome? And doing a subject that you hate, that you have to dedicate more time to than any, or at the expense of other subjects, at the expense of a social life, at the expense of a job or sport or whatever other hobby you have, is probably not going to then generate a really positive outcome.
Well, I had a friend of mine was advised by her school, or found out that her daughter was advised by the school that she should quit her part-time job. And so that parent was furious, of course, because that's not really a school decision. That's a
Mm.
family decision, and it should be one made at home, not by a
Definitely.
school.
And not only
Really,
that, I think the evidence doesn't support that.
no.
When we look at the research coming out of places like the OECD and things like that are telling us that young people who have part-time jobs have better outcomes.
Yeah,
Whether in terms of education, whether it's in terms of more longer term employability, the outcomes are better.
yeah.
The discussion perhaps needs to be about time management, and it needs to be about what's an appropriate number of hours to be working in a part-time job. And that's, I think, the part of career education that often gets overlooked.
Mm,
I think one of the key issues in career education in schools is that career educators are often really time poor, and are often, I guess, directed by what the agenda is of the school. Um, and that's making decisions. So
mm.
subject selection, post-school pathways, decision. But there's a whole other field of career education that looks at things like self-reflection and employability skills and um,
Cognitive.
having exactly critical thinking, having difficult conversations, looking at your well-being. That's all exists. And we have the Australian Blueprint for Career Development, which clearly sets it out as an agenda. But for a lot of schools, that's sort of the optional stuff because there's no clear outcome out of it. But it's so important. So, having a conversation with a year nine student about writing a resume and a cover letter and how to do a job interview, really important. It's an outcome. We can see, oh, now they have a resume, we can tick that off. We've done a practice interview with them. We can see that they've done that. We can tick it off. But how about we teach them how to set boundaries at work? I feel unsafe. I don't really know what I'm doing. I haven't had training. My boss is asking me to work 16 hours this week, but I've got 3 assignments due. How do I have that difficult conversation?
Yeah.
That's all work stuff. That's all career education. And that's what we should be doing as well, not just the stuff that's visible.
Definitely. It's so important. Yeah, I have two children who work part-time. And yeah, just even dealing with managers
Yes.
and rosters and roster changes and all the different
Mm-hmm.
things that happen in a job that are setting you up for your future anyway. And
Mm,
you have part-time jobs, learn so much about interacting with people, dealing with
mm,
customers, particularly if
mm-hmm.
they're rude.
Yes.
And as a female, especially,
Mm,
the experience that one of my children has had is quite eye-opening, and the
mm,
things that she's had to manage, self-manage,
mm,
and think on the spot and on how to respond and how to react in
mm.
a way that is still good customer service, but also having self-respect, which
Exactly.
are such important skills to have in the workplace,
Yeah.
and knowing what your rights are as well as a human, not just as a
Yes.
worker, but as a human, and having those boundaries, as you said. So, and I suppose they're the sorts of conversations parents should be having with their kids at home as well, and checking in to see how they are being treated in the
Mm.
workplace and how they are problem solving and really establishing those skills. But I think it would be amazing if that is part of the careers education
Oh, and
program.
it happens. I think another issue with career education in Australia is that we don't have one agenda. So what happens in one school might be amazing, and they might have the model for career education, but there's no one governing that. There's no one saying your career education program is great and yours needs to be improved. There's benchmarking that's available. So, all different organizations can come in and say you should be improving in these ways, but there is no one overseeing it. So it's not like a curriculum body that's coming in and there's checks and balances in place that you're teaching the right things and it's addressing the curriculum. in career education, it's kind of like an honesty policy.
Yes,
Um, and
that blows my
and
mind.
it's really concerning. And the member organizations or the professional development associations push for it, because we recognize how important it is. But it just slips on and off government agendas.
Yeah,
So, 10, 15 years ago, the Victorian government pushed for career education as core business in schools, and all of these amazing initiatives were announced. Some of them were rolled out to different extents, but that was only for state government schools in Victoria. So, Catholic schools and independent schools, they're different and they don't have that funding. So, the experience is going to be different. And it's different per state as well. Some or many schools across Australia don't have a qualified career practitioner in their school.
yeah.
So they might have someone in a role, but they're not qualified. They don't have a professional qualification. They haven't had the training.
Usually a
Um,
teacher.
yeah, it is. It's usually a teacher, but it can be anyone now. So we have a lot of non-teaching staff that will jump into the role as well, and that brings. It's not a bad thing, but it does bring a different skill set and a different way of creating the curriculum. For example, if you don't have a teaching background, creating curriculum is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So
And
it does.
how are they advising kids and how do parents know what they're advising them?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it'll just be lumped on someone that they might not even opt into the role. All of a sudden, you come back at the beginning of the year and now you're in charge of subject selection. It's just kind of been added to your role and you just have to learn. And it's really quite frightening. And I just worry. I worry about the kids, the advice that they're being given. I don't think anyone is out there in a school trying to be bad at their job. I don't think anyone is out there trying to give wrong information. But I think that there are some schools that are not investing the time, the energy, or the resources into providing good quality
And how
programs.
important is that now? Because I mean, it's even more important now because careers are changing and
Yes.
there are less people going to university and seeking out new ways to work that are flexible and
Mm,
online.
hmm.
Obviously, we need to really guide our children properly around this because there are a lot of people trying to spruik online how easy it is to make money online, have, however many 10 weeks off a year and you can work from anywhere and all that sort of thing. But that's not the reality
No.
because as a small business owner, yourself and myself, we know that we have to work really hard to make money
Hmm.
and find clients
Yep.
and really it takes a lot of uh, personal skills to be able to do that as well
Mm,
and self-motivation and all of those things that perhaps young people don't really think about. They
mm.
see all, these people making lots of money, but and through Bitcoin and all these things that are just thrown at them now online.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
very enticing, but it's not the reality of how we can guide our children towards, a job that may not even exist yet. It's very
Yeah.
difficult for parents to be in that space. So how do you
Yeah.
actually support them in understanding what's happening out there?
I think it comes back to what you said before. It's a critical thinking skills. If it's too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And what I find in that social media space, as an adult, is that there is this sense that I can write anything online or I can say anything online and it's true because I've put it in the public domain. I don't actually have to provide any evidence of it. And you find that with these people who are doing these, oh, I'm a lifestyle coach and I'm a this coach and I do this and I work from Bali and I work for 2 hours a day and make $1 million, you know. But how do we know that that's true? What evidence is there that that is actually true? And I think it comes back to helping young people have critical thinking skills, helping them to have that awareness of what are we seeing online and whether it's about jobs or whether it's about news or whatever it's about, how they evaluate it. And how they're engaging with it. So it's just as much a critical thinking thing as it is a career development skill as well, because that is the space that they're going to occupy. They're going to get a lot of their information from online sources that isn't being checked, that's not being verified. So we need to get them to a space where they're savvy users of that.
Yeah, discernment is such a big
Yes.
skill that we need to really be focusing on.
Yeah. And when you think about it, a lot of it's not new. We've had pyramid schemes around for a really long time where come into my business and, you'll make all this money, but really I'm the only one making the money because I'm profiting off you. It's not new. It's just kind of moved into a different space. So,
And
yeah, just
young people are on there all the time.
yes,
So now you've just written your first book
yes.
called Navigating Your Future Career and Work Life. Can you share a little bit more about the book and who it's for and what people can expect if they purchase the book?
Yeah. So for me, it's just an opportunity to tell young people the stuff that I wish that I had time to always tell them in school. So if you can't meet with a careers advisor, if you're not confident in doing it, or you don't have one available in your school or anything like that, this book is kind of like a substitute for that. So what do I think that all young people should know at a really basic level? And it's designed that you can read it cover to cover, but you can also just jump in it and read certain sections of it as well that you might need if there's a little gap in your knowledge. I also think that whilst it's the audience for the book is young people, it's probably good for adults and parents to read as well, just to get that background information. We used to have an amazing program in Victoria called Engaging Parents in Career Conversations, and the whole aim of that was to position parents so they felt confident to be career allies.
Yes.
And it's not that parents are taking charge, but it's there as their support network, and they feel confident in their role as a support person for this young person. So I guess that was sort of in the back of my mind there, that this book is kind of like that,
Yeah.
taking on that idea of what's my little support that I can wrap around young people. What questions do they have? What are the misconceptions that they often have as well? Yeah, so that's the aim of the book. And
Excellent.
it's an easy read.
So is that program still running in some schools or is it?
It's not, unfortunately. I tried to find it the other day and I ended up in a really dark, hidden corner of the web trying to find the resources that were really outdated now. Um, Australia used to get a lot of their education resources, career education resources from Canada. And Canada did some amazing work. It's kind of fallen off the radar. Yeah, so some schools still run it in I guess, their own version of it, and it's a really, really great program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the program Tuning Into Teens.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that, but a careers education version of that,
Okay.
where it's what these are the issues, these are the terms that you need to know about. These are the labour market information. Here's the resources that might be useful. Here's how you have a difficult conversation with your child about stuff. And what if they come home telling you that they want to be, I don't know, a circus performer after you've sent them to a $50,000 a year private school? Like, what are you going to do? So all those kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it saddens me that that's not still happening in schools.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is? Why are parents sort of shut out of the conversation in?
Mm. I think I think it goes back to that idea of what's the agenda of the school, and how much time do career practitioners have, and how are they positioned within the school. Um, there is a ratio of career practitioners to students that's considered best practice, and that ratio rarely actually happens in real life. Um, and so I sometimes think that career practitioners are drowning in all the stuff that they have to do. And then in many ways, they triage. They're like, what's the most urgent thing we need to do? And whilst we all know that parents are part of the conversation, it's insane not to know that.
Yeah.
Parents are so influential, not only in shaping attitudes, but in shaping aspirations, providing resources, facilitating things like who's taking you to your part-time job, who's going to take you to the open day, all those kinds of things. But sometimes it's just like, I'll get to them when I've got time, and that time never comes. So I feel like it needs to be a cultural shift. Needs to be a cultural shift in the way that schools view career education and its value and its purpose. And then I think it needs to be a cultural shift in who should be involved in that conversation.
Yeah.
And parents must be involved in that conversation.
And it really should, it sort of leads to me thinking just back to my work with Catholic School Parents Victoria.
Mm,
We did a lot of work around informing parents about career
mm,
open days and all those sorts of things because
mm.
if you haven't been to university, you may not even know open days exist.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that parents, in a lot of ways, they need to be taking control of their own advocacy for,
Yeah.
which is why I wrote my book as well, to
Yes.
understand that you actually have a lot of roles to play in their education success. In
Yeah.
a way that is still giving them independence, but
Yes.
I'm an independent learner and decision maker, but also you also need to be guiding them along the lines of all of these things, including, the subject selection and taking them to open,
Mm.
like being aware of what is out
Yeah.
there. And,
Yeah.
parents are working in the workforce, they can see what's happening in the workforce,
Mm.
their own profession. And if they don't do this with their children, then and the school is under resourced, then they're really doing
Yeah.
a disservice. Not to put blame on parents, but
No, definitely not.
them be more aware of um, what that role actually is.
Yeah.
Be more informed about what the careers education program is at school.
Yeah. And not leaving it to the last minute, I think. Like a lot of parents, people are busy. Like I'm a parent and I would love to say I always read the school newsletter, but I don't.
No.
And I often miss things.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's so much information, and sometimes I will overlook things and not attend things because I think it's not quite right for me. And it may well be right for me, and I just haven't valued it. And I think, if you've got multiple children and you're managing all these different things that are coming at you, it is really easy to overlook that stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, I think a
Especially
really,
at different schools.
yes, I think a really easy way is to check the newsletter. I think at the most basic level, most career practitioners will contribute stuff to the newsletter, particularly around those open day times.
Yeah.
A lot of careers advisors now will have a sub website or a page within the school website that is a careers page, and there will be a wealth of information on there. The problem is that a lot of people don't even know that that exists.
Yeah.
So there's this disconnection between what information exists and actually getting it out there in a way that's user friendly, and accessible, and not overwhelming for people
Yeah.
as well. So I know we had an amazing career education website at our school. And when I would look at the data, 5 people would use it in a month.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, there's all this good information. It takes me all this
It's
time
daunting for
because
people.
people just didn't know it existed. And, that's always a problem too with we live in this information rich society, but how does your voice get heard over everybody else's? How does my information get to you at a time when you can actually access it and you want to look at it? So,
It's actually about understanding your audience, isn't it? And understand
yes.
the perspective of parents who
Yeah.
are going to be accessing that page.
Yes.
how is it actually promoted to parents?
Yes.
They feel safe and comfortable to actually
Yep.
access the information.
And does it mean anything to them? I can write on their apprenticeships, but if their conception of what an apprenticeship is really old-fashioned or what it was like when they were growing up, they're not even going to look at it. Or if you use something like a vocational major,
Yeah.
if you haven't experienced that, you don't know what that means. So you're not going to access that information.
Well, that
So
took me a while to get my head around,
yes,
like right in there at VCAR meetings and all.
yes,
Still couldn't get my head around it. And I
yeah.
had to figure out a way to explain it in a way that was easy to understand for parents.
Yes, yeah. And that's, I think, half the battle too. And it's almost like the same as when you're in a classroom that you are teaching young people who are coming at things from all different angles, with all different background experiences and understandings. And then you take that out to the parent community as well. And you've got people who are university educated, who are not, who have been educated overseas, um, all these kinds of things. So there's yeah, all these different elements that you have to cater to as well. And for some people, it's probably too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's why you started your business, so that
Yeah.
you help people with that information.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about your business and how people can get in touch with you if they would like to speak with you along with their child about how to
Yeah.
future career?
So I'm not doing any careers counseling anymore. I don't have time to do it anymore, unfortunately. What I'm doing now is more education consulting. So possibly doing work with parent communities in schools, and things like that. Um, I do have an Instagram page where I do post useful information that I think that parents should know about. It is probably changing focus a little bit now, I guess, as we all evolve and change and do different things change around a little bit. Um, but yeah, my focus now is more on education consulting. And so I do work with some member networks on curriculum planning, and really challenging the way that we see career education. So it's not just about decision making, but looking at more of those big picture issues. So doing more work on things like, what does working from home look like? What does it mean to have precarious work, for example? What are the issues that are in the media around career education or work, and industry? So that's sort of the space that I'm working in a bit more now. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, that sounds it sounds interesting because, well, because of what we've talked about today, just in terms of the changes that need to happen in education and
yeah,
really exploring why there's not enough funding and
yes,
through the
yeah,
government, which is really strange to me if they're trying to get people into work and keep the unemployment rate down.
yes.
Why is there not such a focus on that in our education system?
Yeah, and really disappointing. In the most recent budget, the funding for the National Careers Institute was actually cut as well. So that's no longer being funded,
Yeah,
which from a research perspective is really concerning. From the resource perspective, it's really concerning because lots of really good stuff has come out of that institute. And where it's going to go and what it's going to morph into and who's going to fill that void is it's really uncertain.
yeah,
And I think when things come from a government level, the reliability and the validity are higher. Whereas what we've seen in the past is when the government steps away, then you have private enterprises come in to fill that gap, which in some cases is good, but in other cases, it's about selling and it's about marketing.
yeah,
And that's not always the best in this space when we want young people to find the best solution for themselves in terms of their future. And they're just being sold something and they're just being marketed at. That's maybe not the best thing. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess as parents, we really need to do our homework
Yes.
to really be more informed to try and
Yeah.
our children and yeah, and like I always try and promote to work with the school to understand
Yes.
what is available. Do read the
Yeah.
newsletter if you can and make
Check
it
if they've a website.
a priority, but also
Yes,
ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions because
definitely.
I think that's half the battle is knowing what questions to ask and also having the confidence to ask them without fear of, being rejected, I suppose, or told that you're being a helicopter parent or
Yeah, definitely not.
you're
I
not.
actually,
That's your role as
exactly. And you know what? I would always appreciate when a parent would say, look, I'm really overwhelmed. I've got no idea what I'm doing. I finished school 25 years ago. VC wasn't a thing back then. I've got no idea. And they'll come in with their little notebook with all their questions and we just chat about it. And the students there, and sometimes I'll say, what do you think? What do you know? Blah, blah, blah. But it's a dialogue. It's not just, the parent going, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. It's more like, I have no idea what that means. And you'd be surprised at how many people are in that boat.
yeah,
I would also say too that once you get to the end, like that year 12, there are lots of resources available too through places like the Tertiary Admissions Centre that are great. But again, it's about knowing that they exist and
yeah,
then accessing them. Because if you don't even know they exist, you can't access something. But they have specific sessions that are designed for parents and for students. Sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're online. They're always recorded, so you can always access them.
yeah,
And there will be sessions held at universities and at TAFEs that are directed just at parents.
yeah.
So send your child off to go get a coffee or whatever and go to that session. So I think, yeah, get along and attend those as well.
No, that's really good information to know because yeah, it's difficult to know actually, where do we start and
Yeah.
what's out there. I mean, Google, you can obviously Google things, but it's good to know from an expert who has been working with parents and families and in education for a while, what you know. And so I want to thank you for sharing your
No
knowledge
problem.
today. I could talk to you all day about this, I think, because there's so much to unpack. And I think that it's really informative information for parents to know
We
all.
didn't even get to talk about AI.
Oh, we can talk about that now if you want.
I'm
Well,
actually writing something at the moment about AI and its use within schools and how it can be used from a career development perspective. So it's in my head at the moment.
oh, fantastic. Well, maybe I can have you back on to talk
Yeah.
about that because I think that could be a whole episode as well.
Oh,
So,
without a doubt.
yeah, and obviously that's on parents' minds as well. The
Yes.
whole AI careers future, like what sort of careers are going to be disappearing and
Yeah.
how
And
can
do you need a
AI
careers counselor if you've got an AI bot there helping you? Hmm.
true. That is true. There's
The
going to be
answer is
like
yes.
you still need that human element and of course there's an app for everything now. So soon there's an
Yes.
AI tool for everything as well. So
Yeah.
but once again it comes back to the parent role to help children, yeah, and young people discern
Yes.
what's actually appropriate and what's actually real.
Yes.
And that's going to be
Yeah.
the biggest challenge, I think, is knowing what's real and what's not. And
Yes.
authenticity is such an important aspect of our
Yeah.
nature. So,
Yeah. And being able to evaluate the quality and the content, and the truth, I think, behind it. What's fact, what's fiction, what's made up? Why does that person in the photo have six fingers? Be aware
yeah,
of that stuff.
I know it's just a whole new world that we're stepping into. So,
Yes.
but thank you so much for joining me here today.
No
It's
problem.
so interesting. I've really enjoyed our conversation and
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I'd love to have you back to talk about AI and what the developments are in the future and what's
Yeah.
in your little mind going on
Yeah.
here, and how you can be informing parents about that as well. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode from our Circle of Support series of the podcast. If you would like further information about how to be in contact with our guest from today, please click on the links below. If you are a parent who is struggling with any of the issues we've raised in this episode, I invite you to book a call with me by clicking on the link below or scanning the QR code on the screen, so you can share with me what challenges you're experiencing and I can share how I may be able to support you as you guide your child or children through their learning. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Creating Connections podcast to continue to learn from myself and our guests how you can best support your child as they navigate their learning. I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on the next episode in our Circle of Support series.